Hi, Lee Smith from Blood and Iron Martial Arts, joined today by special guest,
John Patterson with the Phoenix Society of Historical Swordsmanship.
Today we're going to do
Pugilism, focusing on Colonel Monastery.
All right, so John, the Colonel was a legitimate badass.
A legitimate badass. He basically joined the Navy as pretty much a kid. Got blinded either through training accident or screwing around with fireworks. Was, for lack of a better word, blinded. Eventually recovered his sight to a degree, though he said his eyesight was never keen. He, about I think 17, went to the Copenhagen Military Academy. Even though he was from there, he was super into America, which we'll get into later, some of the craziness that resulted from him getting to duels. He basically trained, became the #1 student at the academy. He then traveled around the world basically trying to find the best masters he could. Knife fighters, fencers, French duelists, Italian knife fighting guys, like pretty much everybody. At a certain point he realized his education was deficient in the fact that he wasn't able to defend himself with his natural weapons, his fists.
So is pugilism growing in the HEMA community in terms of popularity?
It is. I think partially because it has a lower barrier to entry. I don't need $1,000 to get my fetter, my jacket, my mask, and gloves. And you can literally start with what you're wearing. Sparring, you maybe want a little bit of gear. The thing we want to avoid, though, is maybe not moving to the giant boxing gloves.
Okay.
Because it changes the technique a little bit.
So what would you use then for gloves?
So in my club, we use 4-ounce gloves and MMA headgear with a cage on it. The advantage of this is you can't hide behind your giant fist pillows. The downside is it does add some wrist protection and you can get away with some bad technique. And one of the things we want to talk about in the Colonel system is he's more of a self-defense and pragmatic as opposed to a sport approach. The sport approach, I want to put my glove or fist on my opponent as often. Structure doesn't matter. Similar to the Olympics, right? I need to put the circle of my glove on my opponent.
So just basic touch fencing.
Yeah, just like that.
No different than like the touch fencing we see in HEMA.
Exactly. Whereas the Colonel system, he gets very into, you want to preserve your knuckles. Especially in the 1860s, you don't have microsurgeries to fix if this stuff gets broken. He talks about fighters using up their hands. One of the big ideas is the line of power, which runs from your knuckle through your elbow, ideally through your shoulder and back through the other shoulder. So the idea is I have my feet planted. Actually, I'll do the proper. And I'm here, and I have this line. I have my other hand up to guard my face so that I can lean that force in, right? I don't want to just be standing here and just extending my arm, just using arm power. You want to punch with your whole body, driving that through. Or if we're going low, dropping that down so it's a push. He says, if you think of any target like a sphere, you want to hit that sphere square on. So one of the things he talks about a natural fighter versus a skilled fighter. He said the natural fighter is going to let their elbow go past their line of power, right? This big hook. It's slow, it's powerful, but my hand starts getting vulnerable because it's more likely I'm going to clip you and break fingers, whatever. He says you want to strike with the whole flat of your hand, thumb tucked on your second knuckle. And the idea is that I want to hit with the entire flat surface as opposed to maybe catching you with 2 fingers. He says the full arm punch, which is the first thing he teaches, which is if you took karate as a kid, literally from down here, straight up. We're going to put our shoulders into it to make our line. You want that structure, and he says the force of that punch can't be sustained on any individual knuckle. You want to take on the largest thing possible, which is why you want to aim towards the middle. I don't want to just clip Lee on the ear or the cheek. It's a good chance I'm going to damage my hand. If I'm going to hit him, I want to hit him really square right in the middle of the target so I get a nice solid purchase and can put that force in.
The idea of the force transferring through the target.
Yeah, and with structure, like when you're cutting, right? You don't see a lot of cutting on one foot, right? You got to kind of put your butt into it. You got to put your hips into it. So you have that structure and you're keeping that line, right?
So this is the theory that he's put down, that line of power theory.
Yes. So I want to talk about the Colonel's stance. It's going to be left leg forward. He gives advice, particularly of the people you'd encounter during his sort of era, which were French savate fighters, purring, American rough and tumble, which is a terrible form of fighting. It's just brutal. African headbutters, all kinds of stuff. But the idea is we want left leg forward and our right foot, or your dominant foot, back and turn it to right angle, almost like a fencing stance, but here's my normal fencing stance. I want to reverse it. Here, I got my left hand tucked back here, right hand in front of my chin, And the goal is I want to protect my face and protect the mark, the spot you do not want to get hit and the wind knocked out of you. The advantage of this is I'm mostly on back-weighted, so if I need to, this foot can be lifted up, which he talks a lot about when people want to kick you. You want to get this foot out. Or if things get real bad, scoot back. You always want to jump away from danger, not into it.
So you want to show us why we do it? Yeah.
So I'm here. Okay. Lee's my target. And my left hand, he says you always want to do feinting with your left hand, because if I throw my right out, I've sort of opened myself up, my left hand's not as good. If I throw my right, or my left, and say I do contact, I know I'm in distance. Once that's in, I can roll my other punch along my line of power, and once Lee's head starts moving backwards, I'm going to step in with the left. He says, like the walking beams of a locomotive. And I'm not just throwing a fury of arm punches. They're structured, that line, knuckle through here into my shoulder, through, and as I'm taking that step, I'm walking with the step.
Should we get a kicking shield then? Maybe demonstrate? I'll just hop over here and grab that.
I've taken my stance, and ideally, I should be one step out, or so that I'm standing out of range, my opponent can't attack me, but when I decide the moment's right, I can advance in, hit, got my line of power. Once I've connected, I'm going to roll the next one in, keeping this hand up covering my head, and like the walking beams of the locomotive, my next one's going to step in, and I want to just keep that line. The idea is that your blow's sickening your opponent. I'm not just slapping or tagging. I want to disrupt my opponent's body.
You can really feel that even through that, even a light punch. If you actually throw a good punch, like I can feel this drop my weight back. These aren't weak.
All right, we're going to talk about parries, especially parries on the outside. Now, he mentions how the common fighter is going to throw with their elbow outside their line of power. This will work with a straight shot also, but the big thing is we want to take it on the meaty part of our arms, so we're not taking it on our delicate wrists or on these bones here. And so the idea is that we're also in a position to return the blow. So if Lee throws a punch at me, and I catch it here, I want to catch it on here. Ideally, Lee's going to put his wrist into my elbow and break it. Similar to like some of the modern self-defense attempts where we roll up here and shield ourselves, but boom. And this hand's up here ready to return the blow. I don't want to drop a low shot because this hand's still ready to come in. And that's actually referred to as a stopping blow. When in doubt, if I'm open, he doesn't have to structure too much, but he can literally put a stopping blow right into my nose. So I want to block up high here, and if I can, return up on covering that line, at which point I'm set up for my next half-arm blow.
So John, what about grapplers? Guys who just want to come and tackle you and get in?
Because it's a self-defense system, he talks a lot about various types of fighters you might run into in their approaches. The idea of a grappler is either I want to stay out of range. He's a smaller guy. He talks a lot about not wanting to get grappled. There's basically two options. There's basically the opponent rushing in to grab you, and the idea is I want to do a stopping blow, which I want to basically put my hand into his face, teeth, nose, whatever, and create that structure to stop it, and then reposition, move. You should be able to switch up your guards either side. Now, if I'm dealing with something referred to as chancery, which is literally Lee's got me in a headlock or whatever, he's grappled me up, whatever. He gives a couple solutions to this. This is a bad spot. I don't want to be here. But there's all kinds of things of like, I push. You're taking over his knee. If Lee's too strong, starts pushing me forward, I can literally slip it. And the idea is I'm using his force against me. There's a couple grabs around the crotch, hand on the throat type stuff. But ideally, we're gentlemen. We're not dirtbags wrestling in the street. I want to sicken my opponent with a solid blow, ending the situation. I don't want to be rolling in this mud. And particularly rough and tumble fighters, which is a problem in America, particularly the South, where you could gouge eyes, bite off fingers, horribly disfigure your opponent. He says, don't get involved with these.
So you just use your pistol?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. So now let's go over, you're talking about an exchange.
Yeah. And the idea is that if we're close enough that all you have to do is extend your arm to hit me. I have gotten too close. I've made myself vulnerable. Is these quick, just sort of inside parries. Something's coming on that side. Something's coming on that side. I'm literally just using my forearm and just trying to clear the way to give myself room to think, to set up, so I don't get my bell rung. The other option is a change, which is I use my open palm. Ideally, if I can grab here, I'm in a good position. to come over the top, create my line of power, do a drop punch to the body. He's having a hard time coming over. And that can work either side, right? If this arm comes in and I'm just doing the exchange, if I can get that wrist, I can step in, step on the inside. A little more awkward. It's still a pretty good idea.
All right, that actually is pretty good because you're obviously taking my line and pushing me aside, and I can't do anything with my other hand while you have full opportunity to punish me for my mistake.
Particularly, too, the common fighters not going to be as handy with their opposite hand, their offhand, right? You know, they generally train the right hand. If you've seen a lot of bar fights, right, it's a big one coming in. They want to try and grab somebody so they can.
So the classic Canadian hockey jersey fight.
Exactly. You know, if you want to be skilled with your right and your left. He says in his book that, you know, you should always be superior to the rowdy. And you got 3 advantages. Your body has not become brittle with repetitive labor. So your body's supple, can be taken to any task. You're smarter. And third, you have the resources to basically pay for excellent teachers. Like Blood and Iron.
Oh, and Phoenix.
Yeah.
So like movies like Sherlock Holmes and stuff, they have this style of fight. What do you feel they get wrong?
A lot of the blows are superficial, sort of arm slappy stuff. But the one thing I do like is the fact the arms are out front, right? I got my body tucked. Most people are leery throwing a big haymaker to the head because of self-preservation of the hands. The other thing the Colonel talks about is, first there's a sparring motion, this light motion of the hands. And the idea is if I'm standing static and I throw an attack, you know, similar to a lunge, right? It's very obvious all of a sudden there's movement. If I'm staying as I move, my hands moving, they can come up really quick and I can change up stuff and it becomes part of a fluid movement. The other thing is if I set up, it's real tempting to get my body tight. It feels like I'm getting strong. The downside is once your muscles tense, before I'm moving it, I have to relax at least one of the muscles, right? You either have the extender or the contractor. But a lot of times people hold them both tight. You just delay the amount of time it takes to make your strike.
So what do you do against a kicker?
Don't be there. Don't let them kick you.
That's it?
Yeah.
Awesome. So John, what do we do about a kicker?
A kicker, ideally, we don't want to be there to be kicked, which is simple in a lot of martial arts, right? We pull that leg back. Or if you're fighting a savant guy who can throw big, crazy kicks, we want to jump out, which is literally like the heel click, and I jump out of frame.
All right, John, thank you so much for coming out.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely fantastic. And if you guys want to learn more about pugilism,
you can pick up this book. There's also a lot of free sources for pugilism because, you know, it's big in England during a time where printing was cheap. So you actually have masters writing in their own time period. Mendoza's a really great guy to start with in the late 1700s.
And how much of it is in English?
Almost all of it. And you want to learn the French savant stuff, but why would you? Let's learn proper pugilism.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I mean, the pugilism community and HEMA's taking off. We have a discussion group called HEMA Pugilists where folks are talking, sharing videos, sharing interpretations. If you're interested in the art, check it out.
Didn't this guy dispatch 4 people with his rapier or something like that?
Yeah, he fought under a bunch of different flags, including some campaigns in Mexico, where he basically knocked 4 guys off their horse with his colt. The horse went down, his lance was broken, his leg, I believe, was broken. He was hobbling like a